Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. Got a great panel today. Got a great word, mentor or mentoring. Really look forward to hearing what everybody out there thinks of mentoring, what their definition is, maybe their experiences, or if you just want to say who you are, where you're from, that's a good start. Got Charles Caldwell today, Catherine Chadwick, Jason Gerardo, and we're going to launch. And we'll start with Charles today since it's easier to keep order.
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending on where you are. And what I want to contribute about mentoring is why I'm involved in mentoring. I am involved in 3 formal mentoring programs here in Hong Kong. One is with Hong Kong University, going into the 3rd year of mentoring. And that mentoring program is about having the students at university really understand what leadership is all about. That life is not all about the material success, in their case of the highest possible GPA they can achieve at university, but also really having character as an individual and the virtues associated with leadership. And then the other 2 mentoring programs is mentoring startups, again with university students who've got very bright entrepreneurial ideas, and then a mentoring program through my church. So why I'm involved in mentoring is because I had mentors when I was younger. I think the word mentoring in the last several years has become more in the foreground, whereas when I was younger, running my business, first of all, just as a teenager, the word mentoring was not really on the tip of people's tongue. And so but when I look back, I realized that I actually had leaders who really guided me and shepherded me along the way and encouraged me. And I want to now give back. And that's why I've been so passionate about mentoring for many years.
Well, that's terrific. It's a great story and a lot of background there. And probably should raise some questions and thoughts and maybe motivate people towards mentoring today. Jason.
Good morning, everyone. I was wondering with Dave not here, who's going to go first today? Inside joke there. Great points, Charles. Thank you so much, and thank you for all that you do. It's so important that we find these roles and we fill these roles because it's so important that for all of our development, all of our growth. Pre-talk, Don, you had mentioned that we've all been mentored and we've all mentored people, and that's the important place to realize where we fit in. I'll start off with saying that we learn from everybody, and we either learn how to be or how not to be. And so, you start there, that we're always learning, we're always picking up. But mentorship's more formalized. It's an agreement. I was looking up definitions, and I wasn't crazy about several of the definitions that I came up with, and especially because it talks about age. It's like usually an older person mentors, and I found that's a little sticky. But the one that I found that really touched on me to start today off is it talks about guidance and support. And that's the truth about it. And to go back to Charles' point about that mentorship and mentor is become, more forefront in the last like 10, 15 years plus. I think I want to mention that just training this and teaching this stuff, you look at a manager, you start with managers, and that's task driven. And then you're like, well, but I'm a leader. That's the next step usually, and that's development. But mentorship is growth. And that's the key, is that you're going to help this person grow, where a mentor is going to give you that ability to fall and say, here, go do this. And then you come back and say, well, I did this and I tried this and this is what happened. And then the mentor can then shape your next steps. So it's very important in those to acknowledge and honor how we move through those stages as we go through our leadership careers. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, that's a lot to leave it at. I think it's very informative, and everything we're talking about is a factor of semantics because again, teaching, mentoring, leading. But I'll wait for my turn, Catherine.
If you want to take your turn now, that's okay.
Fine.
Well, you guys are so fun to be with, and I love the different insights that everybody brings here, because I feel like I'm being mentored by you sometimes, right? Because I'm learning from you all the time. Um, I, like Charles and everybody, I've been mentored since a very young age. And the, the gal that was mentoring me when I was, oh gosh, as a toddler, basically, she was fabulous. Her name was Helen, and her nickname was Snowball, and all her friends called her Snowy. And she lived to be 100. And I went to her 100th birthday, and I wrote an article about her, and it was Snowball the Fireball, right? I learned so much from her. Oh my gosh. And when I think back through being in the nursing and the teaching and all of that, I've mentored thousands of people myself, and mentorship comes in various lengths of relationship. And I think it's very much about relationship. And it's because when you don't have a connection with someone, it's not as easy to learn from them unless it's just a quick surface, little lesson, and you keep on moving. I mean, I'm being mentored now by a young gal that is good in tech. And so I'm learning some things from her, right? And so isn't that so fun? I also want to share, and I'm also formally, I guess, mentoring two younger women, and mostly in the nursing arena and career advancement, that type of thing. But I did want to share also. I looked up the origin of the word mentor, and this comes from the NIH National Library of Medicine. And it's centered on the STEM division, and it says the word mentor comes from the character Mentor in Homer's Odyssey. When Odysseus, king of Ithaca, went off to fight in the Trojan War, he asked his trusted friend Mentor to advise and teach his son, right? His son Telemachus. And so I just thought that was interesting, and you just never know what you're going to find when you delve into things, right?
Ain't that the truth? Yeah, and what comes to mind, and that's the beauty of these conversations, is you have conversations in your mind that don't elevate outside of yourself until someone trips the wire. Right? And just looking at mentoring, a lot of times you do things, you get into things that either you have an intention that never gets realized, or you find yourself doing something you never planned, but finding out it was better than what you would have planned. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I look at this show and I'm always reflecting, because we're almost up to 1,000 shows now. Is this really has been a true form of mentoring, because you have layers of individuals. You have the panel ourselves who come together collectively and as a community, and then you have the audience that's present, and then you even have a bigger, even more exciting audience that's yet to see it, because it continues to show itself. And the key, I think, is efficiency of time and value of effort, where how many people can get benefit in a shorter amount of time and duplicate it through them. And over 60 people that I know of launched their show after being on this show. Mm-hmm. Which then expands and expands and expands. And I think that's the wonderment of it. Too many people are looking at quantitative elements or personal elements instead of looking at more of a global opportunity. And I'll finish for now with the element that everything is getting decentralized, whether it's currency, whether it's you name it. Mm-hmm. I think the hope is peer-to-peer support and mentorship that can now take place between individuals from everywhere and really focus on opportunities that are there. So anyways, Charles.
When we reach 1,000 lives for you, Dawn, we have to have a party.
Well, okay.
I think
I'm in for a party.
I think if you're using Restream, you have the opportunity to invite 10 people. So we can have 11 people on your Restream and have a big, gigantic virtual party and invite all the guests to come and join us and watch.
Well, that's a wonderful idea, and it's a great marketing approach too.
There's that as well. On the idea of age, I couldn't agree with that more. I think that everybody has skills, everybody has perspective, and I mentioned here that in the quote here, our chief want in life is somebody who will make us do what we can, and another way that I would articulate that is be who we can be. And one of the best ways to move towards self-actualization is actually make a difference in other people's lives. And mentoring is one of the ways to do that. When we kicked off the mentoring program in our church, one of my messages was to be a mentor and get a mentor. Although I think I said it the other way around, get a mentor and be a mentor, regardless of how old you were. And there were lots and lots of people who wanted to know more about, for example, AI, but had no idea where to start. And we were encouraging the younger generation who were more adept in those technologies to mentor the older generations. So I agree with that 100%. And the other thing I would want to say is that a lot of people think that mentoring is imparting information. And I think that's probably, there's an element of it where it's imparting information. Coaching is definitely not about that. Coaching is about asking questions. But I would also say that true mentoring is not necessarily about advice, problem solving, and skill building, which is how most people relate to mentoring. I would say that the highest form of mentoring is going back to the quote from Emerson. The highest form of mentoring would be about helping people, create a space and create a possibility for themselves and see new possibilities for themselves that they couldn't see by themselves. And a really, really good mentor would take on the form of a natural leader, where the mentee might look back and they might say, I did that myself. And
Right.
Whereas the mentor has actually guided them, but the mentor is not taking the front. They're not being a hero about it. The hero is the mentee. That's what I'm trying to say, and helping the mentee go beyond their current limitations.
Well said. And because we're inviting people to introduce themselves, we might as well introduce them too. We've got John here from Lagos. Well, welcome, John. You were our first today, so really appreciate it. Linda's here. Good morning from Texas. Great to see you, Linda. Reposted on LinkedIn. And moving to Jason before I get into another minute.
And a point that Charles made is that, a leader is not a mentor. A coach is not a mentor. A teacher is not a mentor. But a mentor could be a coach. A mentor could be a leader. A mentor could be a teacher. And that's a very important aspect to think about, because like you said, a mentor's role is very specific, and we should honor it for what it is, because it is that invisible person, in the sense that it is that like I said, a mentor will give their mentee a task, go out in the world, here, let's try this and let's see what you can do with it. And then they go out and they experiment and they learn and they figure things out, and then they come back and check in and say, hey, this is what I did, this is what happened. And that's the relationship and thank you, Catherine, for that. That word is so important, is relationship, because that's what mentorship is all about. It is that relationship. It is that building that. If you have somebody that's just giving you information, giving you facts, telling you what to do, you're not going to be so open. It's not going to be, reciprocal to where you feel comfortable in that role, and you might not feel comfortable making mistakes within the terms of mistake on there. So it's very important to acknowledge that we think, oh, I've had a mentor before, and it's like, well, did you have a mentor or did you have a teacher? Well, what do you mean? Well, did they just give you facts and information and then leave it at that? Well, yeah, not a mentor. So I think honoring that role was very important.
Absolutely. Catherine?
Well, continuing with the relationship aspect of it, what's really interesting is I think that in my own experience, I have been paired with someone, in like a work environment. And that person has just been giving me a lot of information. It was just like, wow, okay. I think there's a level of discernment that has to come in as far as how much of that information you're actually going to allow in, right? Because I think I've used this term before. There are an awful lot of self-proclaimed experts that believe that they are mentors, where in fact, it led me to do a little spoof video, I don't know how many years ago, about inept insurance. Do you have inept insurance? Just like there's no such thing as inept insurance, but you might want some, right? And so I think that that's also part of the whole picture. And I think that that level of discernment starts with just observing someone else's behavior, right? Because we typically know right away whether we think that this person is actually going to be of value or not.
Yeah, for sure. And just to read a couple comments by Charles. True mentors have this unique ability to pick up vibes that everyone else misses from within you.
Mhm.
And I think that's so key because a lot of what I learned was through people modeling.
Yeah.
It wasn't a formal, we're going to get together and talk about stuff, but being able to see people you respect and admire,
Right.
being around them and seeing how they handle things, how they talk, how they act. And I think that's where the vibes come in. When you feel a positive connection with someone who's actually doing things you want to do and hopefully will do in the future, who also then embraces you. And I had a couple mentors, and there's so many opportunities, but people this comment by Charles: the mentor's role is to help the mentee discover their own insights by asking questions that disrupt habitual thinking. Well, again, that kind of relates to who are you around? That statement that you're the factor of the 5 people you spend the most time with,
Mhm.
right? If they're bowlers, you're going to be bowling, right? If they're country Western people, you're going to be listening to country Western. And the only way to change that is to exchange that, right? So you find somebody that you want to get into country Western and you find somebody who's big in it. Just their exposure makes a difference. And I think the other thing that's key to learning is trusting. So whatever the relationship is if you really believe the intentions are there. And when you have mentors who have nothing really that you can understand to gain, but do it so positively, that alone lends itself to higher levels of trust. And I think one other factor that one can come away with is confidence. When someone gives you that confidence in yourself and your ability and your vision and your future, or at least creates a vision, you feel like going forward with it. So I think it's the intangibles that you can be mentored by, as well as the qualitative, quantitative information on how to do it. I think the big distinction is how to be it, right? And once you can embrace that, you start to project it naturally, where it isn't a mission or it's not 2 hours a week we're going to do this. You just change. And I think the habitual thinking is where people get stuck. Not that it's better, it's just familiar. It's just something I've learned to do.
Right.
And I think hopefully discussions like this will open people up to taking that next step to helping someone or being helped. So, Charles.
Well, I love the fact that you have distinguished the difference between being and doing and mentoring, because mentoring is definitely not about being. And a little bit similar to what I said before, a lot of people think that mentoring focuses on the action strategies and behaviors. In reality, it's about the mentor state of being, and their presence is a role model for the mentee, and it's a natural role model. It's not a pretentious role model. It's a authentic ability to listen without judgment as the key to, you know, catching those vibes that are within that mentee that maybe they can't see for themselves, and asking the right questions to help the mentee see things within themselves and go to the next step. But another important aspect of it is that the mentee has to be willing to be mentored. It's like similar to coaching, the mentee needs to be open to being mentored. And if it's a formal mentoring arrangement, then that's something that would be established at the beginning of the arrangement. If it's an informal mentoring arrangement, then it's just really the type of mentee having an open mind. And I remember once hearing or reading a quote along the lines of that someone who refuses to seek advice of others will eventually be led to a path of ruin. And the role of a mentor is to help people perceive their own weaknesses and confront those weaknesses or those developmental areas, because I know in HR we don't like to use the word weakness these days, but to confront those areas of growth with courage. And the bond between the mentor and the protege or the mentee enables them to stay true to the path that they are on together, whether it's formal or informal. And if it's informal, chances are the mentor knows what path they're on, and afterwards that's when the mentee will look back and see the path. And if it's formal, then together they may know what goal that they're working towards. But it's important that people are open to it. They're in a what we sometimes would say, they're in a toward state, and they're open to being mentored.
Excellent. We've got Ayrton, if I have pronounced it right, coming in from Lagos, Nigeria. It's kind of interesting that we have two people from Lagos, Nigeria joining the program. Maybe we're a big hit out there in Nigeria, but always happy to have you. Jason.
Yeah, something you said, Don, that really, really sparked something inside is you talk about trust. And that's a big umbrella, but what I wrote down was trust but verify. If I'm mentoring somebody and they're just taking everything I say for them just for what it is, I'm not of any service to them. If they're not pushing back on me, if they're not saying, well, I tried what you said, or, you know, and I know mentoring is you don't give so much direction, but if they come back and they don't have their own input, or say, you know what, that didn't work for me, that didn't open any new avenues for me, I would be a little concerned as that me doing my role as a mentor, because I need to let them know that they have that freedom to grow, that they, you know, I'm just a conduit to kind of help them get to that next door to open. They've got to find those doors. They have to open them themselves. I'm here, once again, we talked about, you know, guidance and support. I'm here to kind of help you down the hallway, but you're going to pick which doors you're going to open, and you're going to find out what's in those rooms, to keep with the analogy, and what it means to you. And so, you know, trust but verify. So yes, let's have a good relationship. Let's honor the mentor-mentee relationship. And remember, I'm here for you. You know, my skin in the game is that if you reach your goals as a mentor, that's what I want to do. Is I want to be there for you. And so many times, you know, it's that ego gets involved. Well, my mentee did this and my mentee achieved that. And it's like, it's not your role. That's not your role. Your role is to help and support. It's very important.
Yeah, another great distinction. Catherine?
Jason, when you were talking about, you know, it's up to them as to what door they open, I totally agree with that. The word that came to mind when you said that was our own agility, right? To be open to, okay, so the situation may be a little different than what we had envisioned in the beginning, right? But we have to be able to go with it, and we have to be able to meet these people where they are. And what you said, Charles, about disrupting the habitual thinking, I think that's huge, because I think that is almost something to keep in mind daily, not in, you know, only in our interactions with others, but in our own thinking as well, right? So I think that it's important to do an evaluation as we go along. Okay, what is the thinking that maybe could use a little adjustment, and what else could be adjusted? So I think that it's just interesting that we have to learn to be adaptable and to be agile.
Yeah, that is so important. And again, it makes you reach back in your mind. The other night, I actually went fishing with my grandson,
Hmm.
and also, he's 12 years old, and he just took up fishing on his own, and he's got his whole setup and explains everything to me. Um, and when you look at relationships, you want to help somebody go forward, knowing you're not going to be there for the whole journey. And what I'm finding is that mutual mentorship is so important. Things that I share, but things I get shared to, and everybody feels relevant, everybody feels important, and then you get context. And the key is to make people think for themselves, right? Make people be for themselves. And I start out like, I've got a lot of past, you've got a lot of future, right? How do we combine the best of both worlds, And I can see that's happening because he said, well, I got into advanced math and now I'm into advanced music. And he just thrives on personal development, which I said, if I had at your age, because during COVID, every morning I would send him and his sister a great inspirational quote every day. And after about 2 weeks, he started sending me a quote, right? And learning is great. Application is wonderful, right? People who know a lot, it's better than not knowing, but unless you apply it, you're never going to continue. Or what's worse is taking someone's word for it, right? Because someone's important, someone's got a title, well, it must be true. Or I'm obligated because I got myself into this relationship. And I think to Jason's point, questioning is so key, right? Not questioning intent or questioning even the statement, but the variety, right? The things that connect to it. Well, if this is this, then that must affect this that way. And we've got some more comments. One who refuses to seek the advice of others will eventually be led to a path of ruin. And mentoring is about creating aha moments where the mentee sees something fundamental about themselves or their situation in a new way. And I think the new way is key. And, if you're excited by newness and change, you can't wait. So it's really about attitude too.
Mm-hmm.
Are you regressive? Are you stubborn? Are you whatever you want to name yourself? Versus the alternative. Okay, I've got a lot of past. You've got a lot of future. That's great. Sometimes I enjoy what I have to say too.
Well, that's why I put it in there. I thought that was a great quote.
Yeah, me too.
Well, it's something that happens in the moment with the person you're with. With all these shows I've done, I've never had any preparation except for the word. And I give Charles the credit for coming up with the word early on. Before that, it was what he got in your mind. And I can see how undisciplined that could be and how you can get beyond. So Catherine, if I'm mistaken.
That's really funny. I was thinking also, you were talking about vibes, Charles, and thinking about all of this on an energetic level. It's likely that the mentors are meant to be outgrown, right? When the mentee is continuing to evolve, and hopefully the mentor is evolving in their own sphere as well, right? Because we want everyone to evolve and expand and learn more and develop more of that curiosity and that self-satisfaction. And as far as, okay, really acknowledging the gifts and the value that we each have. And we're not obviously all the same. We're very unique. But I think it's important to understand that. And I think that I have seen, not in my own experience, but I've witnessed a couple of mentors and be really offended, I guess, when the mentee says, "Okay, thanks so much, I'm done. Here I go," and they're like, "Well, wait, right? I'm not done yet." But that's not the purpose of being a mentor.
Absolutely. And, I think also mentorship is considered altruistic, when at times it's just as beneficial or more to the mentor than the mentee. And if you have some sort of organized strategy when you encounter somebody, like when my grandkids were born, I said, one word, what will I be with them? And the word came out to be fun. So I said, everything we ever do will have fun as the reason.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take it one sitting at a time or one opportunity at a time, you can make that happen. Long-term goals are easily satisfied by continuous repetition of quality intentions, right? And you always stay within the lines at that point. And I think everybody that comes into your world, you could look at mentoring as, how do I help them do what they wouldn't have or couldn't have done without me, right? And if all I did was give them the word and they didn't even know where it came from, and they took it and ran with it and bettered themselves, that's a benefit. Now you've gained two people's reward for. So I think it's a deeper subject, but people sometimes take it too seriously, right? Or they don't see how little ways. When I leave a grocery store, I always thank the cashier for her quality of whatever I can sincerely see, and that sticks with someone.
Yep.
Because how many times do you get a compliment every day, especially if you're doing a routine, what you think is a low appreciation role, having someone commend you on something you're actually doing and maybe not giving yourself credit for. Charles.
Yeah, thank you. The reason I put that quote in there about I've got a lot of past, you've got a lot of future, I think that there's a lot of poignant wisdom in that statement, Donald. And as I know that we've talked about, mentoring is not age related. The younger generation could be mentoring the older generation, and that would work. But I think there's an aspect of mentoring where the mentor is transferring experience. And I love the way you've articulated that to your grandson, because one could say that you're transferring your experiences from the past into the future. And I think that there's something really special about that transference. And another way of looking at mentoring is that sometimes mentees get stuck, and they get stuck at whatever age they're at. They get stuck in their own stories, their own identities, their own interpretation of past events. And often the mentors will have some form of experience that they can help the mentees to move on from those unresolved issues and free them up to move forward into new possibilities, new paths, new futures. And I think that there's a huge amount of wisdom in that statement. I've got a lot of past, you've got a lot of future, because there's so much of this subtle transference of that experience from one to another that's special and important.
Well, thank you, Charles. I'm starting to appreciate it more and more the more I read it. We've got a couple. We've got Linda here who has a question. How does the American Disabilities Act aid those of USA to be gainfully employed as a mentor or mentee? And Zachary has mentoring is enabling someone to reach that extra mile they wouldn't attain without that input. So true. And I also think it has an impact on yourself because it gives you more relevancy in new areas that you've lost or used to have in other areas.
Mhm.
You know, and you could say past and future, you could say east and west. You know, it doesn't matter which dynamic you're working with. You're bringing two parties together that both have significant value and values and trying to make each one better for the experience. As far as the American Disability Act, I really don't know. But it probably would be something that Googling would probably get you, you know, a little head start on. So I don't know where I left off because I'm talking so much, but I'll move to Charles, I believe.
No, I think you're heading over to Jason now.
Oh, I'm sorry. See, Jason.
You know, the word that Charles had just said, and that's what I wanted to mention, is wisdom. And I think that's the key, is wisdom versus knowledge. You know, I talk about that, I think, in every aspect, because it's so important. You know, we have facts, we have knowledge, and then we have wisdom. And, you know, wisdom does tend to be from, I call it marinating. I'm like, let me let that marinate for a while. And I think that wisdom comes from marinating in the sense that learned experience and lived experience is very important. And so I think that's where age comes in sometimes, is that for most of us, the progression is that lived experience does come with age. So there is that opportunity there. And, you know, what are you conveying to your mentee? Is it just more facts? Is it more knowledge? Or is it that lived wisdom that's going to allow them to see something in a new way? That's the key to mentoring, is showing them something that's new, letting them explore and discover actually something that's new and see a new way of thinking. That's the most important thing. Something else I wrote down is mentorship is flexible and fluid. You know, I've worked with companies and I give them credit because it's trying to develop the muscle of mentorship, and they would assign mentors and mentees. And that's, everyone's kind of learning at the same time. And so it does help develop folks, but that relationship can be challenged because if you're not a true, anyone can be a mentor, but it does take a certain mindset to actually be a good mentor. And so I saw it go kind of sideways, and, you know, it was an opportunity within a corporation to train and to teach people and to get the conversation going. So people kind of found their own way through it, but it was very important. So a structure sometimes in mentorship can be a challenge. So it's that flexible and fluidity that really leads to growth.
Okay, I think that's pretty comprehensive. Catherine?
Oh, a couple of things that came to mind when you were talking about fun, because I think life is supposed to be fun too. So I think that you can find an element of fun in almost any situation, right? And I believe that is also something that comes along with gaining the wisdom, is being able to have experienced and developing that eye for the irony of life, right? And being able to look at things from different perspectives. And that leads me to what you were talking about, Jason, as far as being fluid. And I believe that that's part of being a leader, right? Is to be able to roll with the changes, to be able to see things from different perspectives, and to offer those suggestions and be that role model. And so I think I think mentorship is a lot of roles all rolled up into one.
Yes, indeed. And, you know, mentorship to me is real fun because you get to create.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's not the physical creation, it's when someone has a revelation, right? You can tell when something hit, right? And all of a sudden they're paying attention and now things are changing for them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are just missing that little piece that makes all sense. You know, up until then, it's kind of, you know, right in the middle and you don't know which way to go. And, you know, they say, give me a yes or give me a no, but don't put me in the purgatory of maybe. Right. And, you know, if you can decide, and the other thing is knowing there's someone still there. I think the other key element that we haven't really delved into is access. And with now all the YouTube you can think of, all the social media you can think of, there's so many people that you can relate to, learn from, and even do it inconspicuously, right? I can see people like, you name it on LinkedIn, some of the real pros, and hundreds of hours of their content is there for free.
Yeah.
And you can get that, and you can get seasoning of it. You know, you can get 4 or 5 in the same area to help you. So the key is you got to start with the question and the reason behind that question, and then build on that, you know. And I think it's more expansive than it ever has been. And the people who can find the right mentors for the right reasons at the right time will have a tremendous competitive advantage over those who don't. Right? Most people only learn when they have to. I used to sell a ton of lawnmowers, and I can't tell you how much people spent and didn't want to read the manual before they decided not to put oil in it or something else. But, you know, I think that's the point. You have to be teachable and you have to enjoy learning. So the ability and also the joy of it and the knowledge that little things done right over time can become significant. Wherever I'm at. Charles?
Hi.
1 out of 3.
Yeah. I have the answer to the American Disabilities Act.
Oh, great.
Yes. So actually, this is interesting because mentoring right now, in my experience, is going through a renaissance. So it's really come back into the foreground in organizations. It's one of the ways that organizations are helping to groom and develop talent, seen a higher incidence and increase in that. And there are a lot of mentoring programs that are taking place within companies. And as far as the American Disabilities Act, if anybody were to raise their hand to volunteer to be a mentor or to be a mentee within an organization, then if they have a protected disability, then they are protected against any discrimination, just as they would in any kind of employment decision. So that's the answer to that question. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I would add about mentoring at this particular point is that it's really that shift from, we've been really saying this, but maybe this is another way of saying it. It's a shift from improvement to transformation, and moving from incremental changes where you're doing things better to radical shift and doing things differently. Shifting from an existing mindset into creating a new mindset and helping the mentee see a new mindset, and moving from skills-based and tactical, because if you're providing mentorship that's very skills-based and tactical, that's probably more training. It's not really mentoring. Or you'd be shifting from a skills-based tactical role, which is about improvement, to more expanding the individual as a leader or a manager or as a contribution to the organization or whatever community they're involved in. And what might feel like progress in terms of improvement, in true mentoring, it's actually would feel like a breakthrough. And again, moving towards what we've been talking about, self-actualization and things like that. And I think that those are important distinctions when it comes to mentoring. And within companies, organizations are definitely taking advantage of mentoring. And it's interesting that we're having this conversation because organizations are recognizing that mentoring is subtly different from coaching. There are many similarities, but they're subtly different. And that it's subtly different from training and development, because there's a lot of training and development that goes on. And it's not so subtly, but it's significantly different and prioritized now more over hiring talent in. I think nowadays we're seeing organizations understanding the cost of rotating talent and the cost of attrition. We've seen a lot of waves like the Great Resignation and all sorts of labels ever since then. Everyone's quiet quitting now, and one of the ways that organizations can stop those negative trends from taking shape is by providing mentoring. I got a fantastic statistic about 2 weeks ago at a senior human resource conference that was really stunning. Part of a manager's role is to have career conversations with their employees.
Mhm.
And that career conversation, depending on where that employee is at, could be a coaching conversation, a mentoring conversation, a training conversation. But it's exploratory either way, whatever the conversation is. So in this senior HR leadership conference, a stunning statistic came about. A lot of companies have invested millions and millions of dollars in well-being programs in the last several years as we come out of the pandemic, and a lot of people are dealing with fatigue of what we went through with the pandemic. They're dealing with stress from seeing what's happening in the Ukraine, the Middle East, the uncertain economy, and all sorts of things like that. And so companies are investing millions of dollars in well-being programs. A study was done comparing the impact of a $1 million well-being program or millions of dollar well-being program with managers having 2 authentic coaching, mentoring conversations with their employees, with each employee once a year on their team, and and including in that conversation the conversation about well-being. The impact was the same, and the cost of having those conversations is almost nothing compared to the millions of dollars for well-being. And I was absolutely stunned when this individual presented the statistics from that study. It was remarkable. But it shows you the power of what we're talking about, the power of mentoring and the power of coaching.
Absolutely. Jason?
Yeah, I could talk about that subject for a while as well, about companies building programs just to check a box, and what actually gets results, and actually caring about your people. I mean, I don't want to go on that soapbox, and that's very challenging. We see the power of that one-to-one connection. We see the power of mentorship. Companies wonder why people aren't engaged and don't care when the company doesn't engage or care. And it's like, well, what are you expecting? You expect this one person to drive the company culture, where individuals are the company culture, but it starts at the top. And it starts with this, like you said, I have a client that's dealing with this in their workplace right now, where they take surveys and they asked about, do you feel that you can give feedback, honestly and open feedback, and not have it be challenged? And they all said no. I'm like, well, why? And that's for another conversation for another day. But having the mentoring conversations, checking in with your people, you can see that, you can feel that. They talk about quiet quitting. Quiet quitting is people just doing their job. That's what quiet quitting is. That it's not as negative as everyone says. It's people not excelling, because that's what companies want, right? They want 101%, which we know that's not possible, but they want more. And so quiet quitting is people just doing what's on their job description. And then they're complaining about that. And it's like, well, what are you giving back? And so tying it back into mentorship, and to your point, Charles, showing your people you care about them, that you want to develop them, that they're what's in it for me, growing that's what mentorship does. Oh, you care about me. You want me to grow and improve as an individual. I'm all in. I'm giving back. And so it's very important to see the nuance of the return on investment, as companies like to say, is huge, as you were saying that study showed.
Yeah, it's fascinating, this subject. Catherine?
Oh, I know. I've been doing a little research on that too, and I don't have all the particulars of it. But in 2023, Shirzad Chamine and his group, Positive Intelligence, it says that companies that prioritize wellness achieve a 3-to-1 ROI in productivity gains, and that's a lot, right? And it's interesting in that when I made my exit from the hospital and I did my exit interview, the 10-minute conversation turned into about 45 minutes. And I'm not one to, be laying blame or pointing fingers, but when people do not bring up things that have the invitation, right, for change, you have to talk about these things. And I think that that is part of the mentorship role, as we've all been alluding to, is that, okay, how can the thinking be changed? Because people do what they know. And I think that that is part of the responsibility of a mentor, is to bring things up, and that's part of being a leader. Bring things up that, okay, what are we really doing here?
Yeah, I think that's a quality insight and share. Looking back at my background as far as owning my businesses, and I always prided myself on my people. And I was always in the top 10 employers in Denver every year, and didn't have any retention issues. Because I think what it speaks to is too many people send people outside their company to get whatever help they need, or bring people inside their company to provide that. While you have people already together in the company who could be doing that with each other, for each other. And I always had an open door, and everybody felt free to walk in. So I was talking to some people 3, 4, 5 times a month. Other people, maybe I'd pass them in the hall. But having that availability and having a caring ear that showed they were important. My time was for them. So it wasn't like, I'm busy, let's talk next week, because that would destroy a lot of it. And you have a bond that you start to build. And I think that's so important, where people say, the reason, what I've heard, the number one reward in working in a group is recognition, right? People want to know they're appreciated. People want to know what they're providing has value. And a lot of times, until you tell them, they don't even know, right? So when you can go over all of the good things, and some things take you a little bit off track, take you a little more time, but what is the future value to that? And the other key of any organization is duplicating it through others, right? So if you can do it for someone and they see the value, they'll start doing it for the next person. How people come up is how they bring other people up.
That's right.
Right? And when you're coming from a area where I bootstrapped everything, started with a Buick and borrowed money on it and went without pay for a year, you appreciate that. You appreciate the little things, and you were the person that no one paid attention to or no one saw the value of. And you don't want to make that mistake for somebody else. And plus, looking back again, all the people that came from there who went on to be significant made it all justifiable. But people have to see too much immediate reward or tangible reward in the moment to justify it. Charles, well, we got one question here from Audrey, or not question. It's all about caring for others. Love this conversation. Beautiful. Thank you, Audrey. So nice to have you. Charles.
Well, I really appreciate what you've said about the answers being within, Don. And there's one favorite exercise that I have when I'm working with teams or working with organizations. And right now I'm doing a little bit of work for an organization here in Hong Kong that is reasonably young. They're probably about 10 or 20 years old. They have 3 organizational units within the company, and 2 of the units are quite young. They're probably less than 10 years old. And another one of the units is probably 25 or 30 years old. And then with the pandemic, they probably had a little bit of attrition throughout the pandemic. But when people look around the room, they all kind of ask each other, how long have you been in the room? And they might say, well, I've been here 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. We've got 1 or 2 individuals that have been there for longer, more than 10, 15 years. So one of the things I did to encourage them is I found out how many years experience they had working in the organization and how many years experience they had in their entire career working. And the answer to the first question was 100 years. And the answer to the second question was over 165 years. And when they really saw the number on a PowerPoint screen in number 100 font, like really big, I just put the number up there and they saw this big number. They were stunned because I said, you know, if that was one person, that goes back 165 years. You know, that was the year that HSBC was founded in Hong Kong in 1865. And I said, all the answers to the problems you have are in this room. You know, you all have so much experience. All the answers are in this room. And it's just a question of how do you harness it? And one of the best ways of harnessing all that knowledge and all that experience is through a mentoring program where people can work with one another to transfer their knowledge, their wisdom that Jason was talking about and that others have mentioned throughout our call.
Yeah, great example. Jason?
So just to piggyback on Charles first, I know we're coming up on the hour. It's been a great conversation. Is respect and honor your people. And by assigning somebody as a mentor and then also mentee, but as a acknowledging someone as a mentor, that's how you respect those folks that are with you and have put in the time and put in the effort and have done the work. You know, it's a great way to acknowledge them and to let them share that wealth of wisdom and knowledge. And the other thing I would mention is that, you know, as you get closer to the tip of the spear, it might be harder or seem harder to get a mentor. You know, as you get further along in your career, in your knowledge base, in your role, it might seem more difficult to find somebody. Well, who am I going to get to mentor me? There's people out there. And the key is it's about, you know, we talked about, Catherine brought up relationships, I believe, and it's about relationships. So go to somebody that you see, that you respect, and build a relationship with them, you know, and then see if they can become a mentor for you and say, hey, this is what I can offer. You know, I would love to learn from you, and build that relationship. And most people would take that to heart and say, yeah, I'm more than happy to help you. I'll make time, because you came to them, you took the effort to reach out to them. And so is no matter where you're at in your career, even if you're at the high in your career, we all need a mentor, and there's someone out there that can help you.
For sure. Thanks, Jason. Catherine?
Oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly, Jason. I think that it's always good to have a mentor or a coach, because getting back to we do what we know, even as we evolve, then we get caught in that little trench sometimes, right? Because that's what we know at the time. And it's important to have conversations and experiences with other people to open up the different perspectives and to look at things from different angles and to learn new material, learn new information and new ways of doing things. So yeah, I'm all in. At my tender young age, I have mentors and coaches, right? I think it's important.
Yeah, and I think you can always put it together and say a lot of it has to do with making more friends who can be of service or help, and you can in turn return something to them. And it may just be appreciation, gratitude, keeping up with them. And I think it's, again, people just need to be open to what's going on around them. I get advice from people I don't even know. Right? I mean, I see some on TV and someone told their story and it's like, hey, I can relate to that. Or now because of that, it's going to make me want to do some more of this or that. And I think the fun is the journey, right? Not the destination. Is being a little bit better than you were yesterday, being a little smarter, being a little bit more excited about tomorrow. If you can just achieve those goals, it's not like I want to make 40% more money next year. You know, how can we do it? You know, and you can probably find somebody who can help you. But to me, it's not as imaginative. It's not as creative. It's not as fun. And I think that's the key is no matter what you imparted on somebody, if they don't walk away better than they did feeling when they started, they're not going to look forward to the next get together.
Right.
Right. So if you can leave them wanting more and having more, right, then they're getting more into anticipation and excitement, and they bring that to the table. And just someone who comes back and said, man, I tried what you did, or I heard what you said, and I applied it, and I am so excited. I'm so happy. I'm so successful. I mean, how do you put a value on that? Because that continues on. And I think that's what we have to fully appreciate. Whatever we share with someone, that's cost us time, thought, or resources to achieve that, and to give it away is a wonderful gift. Well, looks like we're at an hour right on the dot. Was a very exciting conversation. We took it all kinds of ways, and I think made it and us better for it. Had a lovely audience. So thank you very much. Anybody have a last word or anything they'd like to say?
Well, I would have a last word. I would just encourage people to get a mentor, as Jason has. You don't have to figure things out on your own. Find someone who sees the greatness in you and work with them and have them reflect back that greatness until you can see it for yourself and expand yourself. And I also would encourage people to be a mentor. You don't need to be an expert, just need to be a step ahead, willing to listen deeply and speak truth. And the act of mentoring will teach you more than probably any book will, or many books will. And we will have to remember that the most powerful leaders in history are always both. They're forever students and they're forever teachers. So stand on the shoulders of giants and then become one.
Couldn't have said it better. Charles, anybody else, another last comment?
No, I think that was excellent.
Okay, I think so too. So with that, thank you all. Go out and find a mentor, be a mentor, and you can always reach out to us and tell us how mentoring has gone for you because of this. So with that, go out and have a wonderful day, and come back in a week from now and